In fact, I even remember what story I opened with on that Sunday. It was the story of a Sunday school teacher who was talking with her class about America, the beautiful, and independence, and our freedom from British rule. And she said, one thing about our country, we are all free. And a little boy protested this idea, and he said, no, I'm not free, I'm for. In this country, we are blessed to be here. Okay? We have so many freedoms that folks in other countries can only dream about, and that's why everyone wants to come here. Okay? Freedom of speech, the right to worship as we please, so many of these outer freedoms. But we also have inner freedoms, which are not dependent upon our doing war with anyone except perhaps ourselves. We have the right to experience peace of mind, even in the midst of chaos. We have the right to experience love and harmony in our relationships, even when there is contention and there are differences to be dealt with. We have the right to know that we are loved by God eternally and unconditionally, even when circumstances might seem to indicate that we're not being loved at the moment. We have the spiritual freedom to strive for a more fulfilling life and the freedom to cease from striving, meaning that we can just be quiet and just be still and experience that presence and power in us that is greater than any presence and power out there in our world. We have the freedom to take time out from our busy life to explore this aspect, dimension of ourselves, this divine in us. These freedoms can't be taken from us, but we can lose them when we give them away. When we give away our power and our ability and this gift to be able to experience peace of mind because we get caught up in arguing and fighting with others in our world. Last Sunday, I spoke about how easy it is for our train of thought to get hijacked and get rolling down the wrong track. Well, it's like that with our emotions as well. All freedoms have a cost. What did someone say? Freedom isn't free. There's always something that we need to do to experience the freedoms that have already and are always given to us by God. Perhaps the payment that we must make in order to experience more of God's love in our heart is to open our heart to others in our lives, to be of service to others, to choose to be encouraging to others, and to strive for a greater understanding between us and others and an acceptance of all others. Perhaps the payment to experience the inner peace that we need is for us to be courageous enough to give ourselves and others forgiveness. Maybe the cost for the freedom to experience joy and contentment in our life, or to experience success and a more abundant life. Maybe the cost for that is that we need to show more love, more kindness, more patience and compassion in our dealings with others in this world. It takes a great deal of courage to show love and kindness and compassion to those whom we may think have an intent to hurt us in some way. But we are all created for community. We teach and we learn in every experience that we have. And this too is a freedom, is another spiritual gift. No one is an island. And in fact, our world is becoming smaller and smaller as we are able to reach across the world to other countries, other nations, and other people, and work with them, or play with them, or do great works with them for the betterment of this world. There is a tremendous responsibility which goes with these spiritual freedoms that we have. And we are just responsible for them as the freedoms that our Constitution guarantees to us. Here's a story about a man who experienced a sudden newfound freedom in his life. Buddy and his wife went to the state fair every year. And every year, Buddy would say, "Edna, I'd like to ride in that helicopter." And Edna always replied, "I know, Buddy, but the helicopter ride is $50, and $50 is $50. One year, Buddy and Edna went to the fair, and Buddy said, "Edna, I'm 85 years old this year, and if I don't ride that helicopter now, I might not ever be able to ride that helicopter." And Edna replied, "Buddy, I know, but that helicopter ride is $50, and $50 is $50. Well, the pilot overheard the two of them discussing this and came up with an idea, an offer. He said, "I'll make you a deal. I'll take both of you up in my helicopter if you can stay quiet for the entire trip. If you can stay quiet and make no sound, no response, okay, I won't charge you anything. Okay, the ride will be free." Buddy and Edna agreed, and up they went. The pilot did all kinds of fancy maneuvers, flipping around and upside down, and he did his daredevil tricks over and over again. But not a word did he hear from Edna or Buddy. And when they landed, the pilot turned to Buddy and said, "By golly, I did everything I could to make you guys yell out, but you didn't. I'm impressed." And Buddy replied, "Well, to tell you the truth, I almost said something when Edna fell out, but you know, $50 is $50. I tell you, freedom is not for the wimps, okay?" Now, granted, this man knew that the fare to get on that helicopter ride was $50, and at any time he could have saved up that $50 during that year because they went to the fair every year, and he wanted to ride that helicopter every year. He did not exert his freedom. At least not in a way that didn't cause a little bit of drama for Edna. We make decisions every day. We make decisions in response to things, in reaction to things, and we live with the result of those decisions. The beauty of God's plan for all of us is that we can always learn to do things differently. We can always learn to think differently, to respond differently to something. We don't have to go year after year wanting to ride that same helicopter. If we are not fabulous, it's because God isn't done with us yet. That's all. And Jesus was always talking about the cost of our spiritual freedom. He was always talking about the courage that we need to not follow the crowd, to come apart from them, and to follow him in his teachings, in his way of life, in his communion with the Father, he called it. He challenged us to think differently. He always said things like, "You have heard it said this and that, but I tell you," meaning turn it over, flip it over, let all things become new. He challenged us, and he said, follow him along the road less traveled. And actually, that was M. Scott Peck's, the title of his book, The Road Less Traveled. Because Jesus called it entering into the narrow gate. Many of us call it personal and social transformation. I love how simply teacher and author Richard Rohr, a Franciscan monk who's living in New Mexico, explains what we need to do to secure our freedom. In an article which he titled Freedom, he wrote, "The wonder of us is that we get to experience freedom. We determine what that freedom is for us. And in this life, we are called to leave the lower self, the ego self. And Jesus says that it is that self that we need to die to let fall away so that we can fall into the wonder of who we are as expressions of God." Rohr writes that freedom for Jesus was purely and simply a freedom from the ego self, which is precisely, he says, freedom for the world. As we let go of the me, we can incorporate and draw in and be part of the us, we. He wrote, Jesus didn't focus on sin, but he went where the pain was. Wherever he found human pain, there he went. There he touched. There he healed. There he lifted up. But we are called to this same work where we are. We can heal where we are. We touch where we are. We can lift up where we are. We can encourage. And this is utilizing those gifts of freedom with which we have been given. It takes courage to forgive 70 times 7, as Jesus tells his disciples, and to forgive as many times as it takes for us to experience freedom, or for the other person to experience freedom. It takes courage to stop resisting our resistance and to accept all of who we are. All of the human self, the human side of us, as well as our divine Christ self. It takes courage for us to think differently, to look at different angles or perspectives of the situations that we encounter. It takes courage for us to stand up and to think the right thing, do the right thing. And we know the right thing because we are working in harmony with that presence in us and open to guidance and follow that guidance. But this is freedom. This is our freedom here in following the path which is ours to walk and serving life in the ways that we are called to serve. This is a kind of freedom. And every day is our Independence Day if we strive for this freedom. And have the courage to experience and express your inner and outer freedoms. Don't let anything frighten you from this holy work that you are about, that you have been born into. Here's a story about jumping to unpleasant conclusions and giving away our freedom to be free of fear. On the outskirts of town, there was a big old pecan tree by the cemetery fence. And one day, 2 boys filled up a bucket of these pecans. And they sat down in the cemetery and decided to divide up these pecans. And you could hear them as they divvied this out. One for you, one for me, one for me, one for you. And there was another boy who was riding his bike, and he came by the cemetery, and he heard voices coming from the cemetery. And he was curious, okay, a little bit fearful, and he stopped his bike, and he listened, and he heard them speaking. One for me, one for you, one for me, one for you. And all of a sudden, he knew what this was. He shuddered. It's Satan and the Lord counting out and dividing the souls in the cemetery. He jumped on his bike and he took off. And just around the bend there, he met an old man who was walking and hobbling along with a cane. And he said, "Hey, man, come quick, come quick." Okay. You won't believe what I just heard. Satan and the Lord are down there in the cemetery, and they're dividing up all the souls. The man said, "What? Oh, beat it, kid. You're full of malarkey, okay? Can't you see I can hardly walk?" And the boy was insistent, and the man hobbled to the cemetery. Standing by the fence, they heard, "One for you, one for me. One for you, one for me." And the man whispered to the boy, "Hey, you've been telling the truth. Let's see the devil himself." And so they went up to the fence, and they tried to see in through the fence, but they couldn't see anything. So both of them clutched. Now this was one of those wrought iron fences, okay, and they both clutched those bars tightly, okay, in their effort to see Satan himself out there. And they were listening, and they heard, "One for you, one for me, and one for me, and this is the last one. That's all. Now let's go get those nuts by the fence." And we'll be done. Because you see, while the boys were counting out the nuts, several of them fell and then tumbled down toward the fence. I understand that the old guy made it back to town 5 minutes before the boy. Don't let fears keep you from experiencing your many freedoms this Independence Day and every day. In closing, I'd like to share a passage by Mark Nepo on this idea of having the courage to be free. And this comes from the introduction to his book, The Endless Practice, Becoming Who You Were Born to Be. He wrote, "So what does it mean to be a soul in the world and to be our truest self? To bring who we are out and to let the world in. This is a brave and endless practice that clarifies and solidifies all the gifts that we have been born with. There's no arrival point and there's no destination, only the chance to be more alive and to move closer to that inner mystery that we call Christ within. When we can follow what moves us, we break out and open what is possible for us. And the light, he says, of soul spills out of us to bring healing. When we are moved to care and to love, not only ourselves but others, who we are extends into the world and we strengthen our roots. It's our love of life that gives us the courage to follow what is real and what is true. And it is our love of others in life that gives us the courage to carry what is real and true. Of course, there's no way to escape the need to do both of these, to let out the light in our soul, to bring healing, and to let in the depth of the world so that it may be healed. The challenge of freedom is to inhabit both. And I've decided to use the responsive reading here in our program as a short meditation this morning. And I invite you to sit back where you're seated. Take several deep breaths. Allow this air, in fact, follow this air in as it enters through your nostrils and moves down through the trachea into your lungs. And from here, this air oxygenates your blood. And from here, follow this air as it travels through your body, bringing renewal, bringing revitalization, but also bringing a calming effect in your body. The muscles, nerves, and cells of your body relax as this air is breathed in. And breathe out or exhale any concerns or worries about your life, your day, about this moment. And as I speak the words of this meditation, you are welcome to accept them as your own, if they're comfortable for you. I am free. I am unlimited. I am an unlimited expression of the good of God. I am free. I am free to experience the light, the love, the peace, the joy, the presence of God in me and in my world. I am free of all that would keep this good from me, of all that takes away my peace of mind, my joy for living, my enthusiasm for living. I am unlimited in my ability to be open to God and to let this presence work in me and through me today. I owe myself to experience all the freedoms that I have been endowed with. I accept peace in the midst of chaos. I accept joy in times of tribulation and trial. I accept harmony in my relationships where there once was disharmony and discord. I declare my freedom to experience the good that God is and has for me today. And as I know this for myself, I know it for my family, friends, my spiritual community here at Unity. I know it for Manhattan and Kansas and the United States and the nations of the world and the people of the world. And I affirm for them, you are free. You are unlimited. You are free to experience and express the light and the love of God in your world. You are unlimited in the freedoms that this presence brings to you. And let's hold our world in mind. God bless America. God bless every country, every nation of this world. And we are part of this peace, this love. We are part of this blessing. And so it is. Amen.